The Hourglass of Life, a story about the power of time. In the quiet town of Maplewood, Vermont, there lived a young man named Jake Mitchell. Though kind-hearted and full of potential, Jake had one major flaw: he wasted time. Whether it was putting off important tasks, scrolling endlessly on his phone, or making excuses, he always found a way to delay what needed to be done. His father often warned him, "Son, time is like money. If you don't spend it wisely, you'll wake up one day and realize you have nothing left." But Jake would just shrug and laugh, telling himself, "I still have plenty of time." A meeting with wisdom. One summer afternoon, a well-respected retired professor, Mr. Harrison, moved into town. Known for his wisdom and ability to inspire, he quickly became a beloved figure among the townspeople. When Jake heard about him, curiosity got the best of him. He decided to pay him a visit, hoping for some guidance. Jake found Mr. Harrison sitting in a rocking chair on his front porch, enjoying a cup of coffee. "Sir, people say you have great wisdom. Can you help me understand how to make the most of my life?" Jake asked, his voice carrying a rare sense of urgency. The old man studied him for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small hourglass. He handed it to Jake and said, "Hold this. What do you see?" Jake turned it over, watching the sand slip through the narrow passage. "Sand falling, one grain at a time," Jake replied, a bit puzzled. Mr. Harrison nodded and leaned forward. "Each grain represents a moment of your life, slipping away. You can't stop it, you can't get it back. And once it's gone forever." Jake swallowed hard, suddenly aware of the weight in his hands. The reality check. Mr. Harrison continued, his voice calm yet firm. "Imagine that every grain of sand is a wasted opportunity. Every time you put something off, every time you say I'll do it later, every time you waste a day doing nothing. One day, you'll look down and realize there's no sand left in your hourglass." Jake felt a tightness in his chest. "But I have plenty of time, don't I?" he asked, though he wasn't sure he believed it anymore. Mr. Harrison gave a knowing smile and asked, "How much sand is left in your hourglass?" Jake glanced down, suddenly realizing he had no idea. "That's the point, son. None of us do." A challenge to change. Jake exhaled slowly, absorbing the weight of the lesson. "So how do I fix it? How do I make the most of my time?" Mr. Harrison placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Start small. Make a plan every morning. Set priorities. Don't waste time on things that don't matter. Most importantly, treat time the way you would treat money. Spend it on what brings value to your life." Jake nodded, determined. That night, for the first time in years, he made a schedule. He set clear goals: to study harder, to get in shape, to call his parents more, to work on skills he had been putting off. The transformation. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Jake became more disciplined. He stopped procrastinating and started taking action. He cut down on distractions, spending less time on social media and more time building the life he wanted. People began to notice. The same young man who once wasted hours doing nothing was now a driven, focused individual. One evening, Jake returned to Mr. Harrison's house, holding his own hourglass, a gift he had bought as a reminder. "I think I finally get it," he said, smiling. "Time isn't something we have. It's something we use." Mr. Harrison chuckled, proud of the transformation. "And how are you using it?" Jake grinned. "Wisely. A legacy that lasted." Years later, Jake became a mentor himself, sharing his story with younger generations. Whenever someone complained about not having enough time, he would hand them an hourglass and say, "Time is not promised. Make every grain count." And so, the town of Maplewood thrived, forever remembering the lesson of the hourglass that time is the most precious thing we will ever own.